Discover La Jolla, where we showcase the jewel of San Diego, and that's La Jolla, California. I'm honored to have Chris Albence with me here in the studio.
Nice to see you, Jim.
Chris, you are an estate planner attorney, is that correct?
Yeah, trust and estates
Trust,
attorney.
trust and estates attorney. I'll get that right at some point in my life. You've been doing it almost 30 years, is that correct?
Yes, over 30 years.
And so tell me a little bit about your practice and why you've set up shop in La Jolla specifically.
Sure. So, well, I came to San Diego from Florida and went to school at Cal Western,
Okay.
and I graduated in 1993, and was I got into surfing, and La Jolla had kind of like the greatest surf area
Yes.
that I found, and it was a beautiful place, and I was really enchanted with it, and so I said, I want to start my business here.
Oh, that's great.
And at the time, I was working for a legal clinic based out of Chula Vista. So I worked for them for maybe about 3 years. And at that time, I started building my own business on the side, and ultimately opened an office in Chula Vista and an office in La Jolla at the same time around
Okay.
1995 or 6.
Okay.
And yeah, that's how it got started.
So tell me a little bit about the services that you do with your firm there in La Jolla. Like, what are the services that you provide to the public?
So our firm is doing primarily estate planning, which I would describe as setting up wills, trusts, and planning for a person's eventual demise
Okay.
or their incapacity. That's the estate planning end. Then there is the administration portion, which is when a trust or an estate has been activated such that either a person is deceased or they become incapacitated, and now someone is going to step in to manage their affairs and settle their estate. So that would
Okay.
be
Administration
the
section of
administration's
it.
portion of the practice.
Okay.
And we also do disputes. So if there is a dispute in an estate or a trust, we will take care of, representing various different parties to any side of that dispute.
And so the word dispute can turn into full-on litigation.
Yeah, it can.
can.
Certainly.
I was reading, I think it was on your site a little bit, and I found it interesting how you were talking about because you're a veteran with this type of litigation, which is unique in its own thing, it's made you a better estate planner because you've seen what was argued in court and what won, what didn't. That's what I took away from. Am I reading into that correctly?
No, you're perfectly on point on that. That's one thing I just kind of learned by happenstance because I was doing the litigation, I was doing the administration, I was doing the planning. And at the time, I was seeing some work that was done by other people that was creating all these types of problems on the administration end and creating opportunities for disputes to arise
Okay.
because they just weren't clear.
Or they were
in-
sloppy in some
yeah.
of the instructions, or
Sloppy in the instructions, sloppy in like titling issues
Got
and
it.
working on various different parts of the planning just were kind of not fully implemented. And so that can, or there's no planning.
right,
And so
Right.
then those type of situations create, massive family disruption,
right.
massive expense,
And s-
lots of
and-
heartache.
And so that's one of the things you're trying to cure is come in, meet with our firm here, meet with me. We'll set up your estate and we'll hopefully help you avoid future problems with the family and the money and how it's handled and how it goes. It's a very clear direction instead of total confusion when someone passes away with nothing in place.
Precisely.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and that's kind of what really I enjoy about the practice now is really getting precise with people's affairs because let's face it, when someone dies, I mean, you want to have time to grieve. You want to have time to not be thrown into mass disruption. And I want my clients to feel comfortable that they have set their affairs in such a way that when that unfortunate event does happen, that their spouse and their children or their loved ones are going to be able to focus on, their life,
Right.
their grieving,
Right.
wrapping up their personal affairs, and know that the financial affairs, their estate affairs are in order. They're going to need to be addressed, but hopefully it's not creating anger. I mean, because it can create anger.
Of course.
You don't want someone angry at you after
A loved one passed
after
or
you
someone
after
just
yeah
passed.
after you pass.
Yep.
If your spouse and your children are upset with you because you just failed to do
Right.
the right things.
It sounds like, when I was younger, having a trust or having an estate, seemed very like formal, and that's what rich people do, and like it's got to be complicated, but it's not that complicated to form a basic living family trust for a husband, wife, and children, correct?
Yeah, it's fairly common and fairly straightforward and simple. In California, in many states in the past, people would just do a will. And
Okay.
that makes a lot more sense to someone like, okay, I'm going to leave a will.
Okay.
In California, we use trust in the place of wills. Almost most of the people do who do any planning.
Got it.
Just because there's more opportunity to save additional expenses that are involved with something called probate.
Got it. Okay. So there's a lot that can go into this planning that will affect the taxes in the future. And depending on obviously how many assets a certain person has, is how complex and layered that trust must become.
Sure. So, I mean, even the most basic estate could be subject to a court proceeding. So we have trusts that are very simple, that are almost, again, like a will substitute. It's like a will. It's not that complex. But then there are more complex trusts as people's situations warrant more
Right.
complexity.
People get older, people get different jobs, people maybe inherit assets that are now being added into that trust. All those titles have to be relabeled. And so that's part of the administration where you're basically constantly updating people's assets and making sure everything's titled correctly, and right?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of that. I look at it mostly as the initial setup.
Uh-huh.
You'll create the estate plan, the will, the trust, and powers of attorney and things like that, health directives. And then after that's been created, very shortly thereafter, you will work on the integration of your assets into that framework. So you'll have, your retirement accounts, your real estate, bank accounts, life insurance policies, retirement accounts. Those all need to have some attention to every individual asset
Right.
to make it coordinate and integrate into the structure that you've created.
Cool.
So that kind of happens right after you do the
Initial
estate plan.
creation.
And then say, 2 or 3 or 5 years later, some assets have changed, then that may just require some
updating.
attention to those new assets to make sure that they are titled properly or the beneficiaries are designated correctly.
When I was researching you and your firm a little bit online, I saw something in there too that I found it interesting. You don't uncover a lot of the problems that people have with their estates until it's too late or someone's passed. And that you probably see that where someone just didn't follow through with the planning, and now all these problems have arisen that you wouldn't have thought of until the person has passed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that does happen. I mean,
It doesn't happen that much.
well, that's what I'm trying to avoid
Good.
happening.
Got it.
But that does require, being on top of things and carrying forward and following through on.
Let me
the second
back
part.
up because I don't want to make it sound like he's ever fucking up, right? let's make it very crystal clear that counselors never made a mistake. I guess when I read
don't think you
that, I
said
was
that.
thinking you're probably seeing other people's wills and estates that are littered with fucking problems that
True.
people don't. Sorry.
But my clients who also make mistakes too. My clients, I can only do so much. Like I create the framework, I give them the directions. They
Right.
have to carry out the
They
tasks.
have to, right?
And then if they carry out those tasks, but then 10 years, 20 years go by and they haven't revisited those things start leaking out.
yeah, got it.
So you may have created a trust, you may have created and put your real estate into the trust, put your bank accounts into the trust, put your investment accounts into the trust, named your trust as the beneficiary of your life insurance. But 10 years go by, 20 years go by, and your assets have changed, your real estate's been sold, your life insurance policy has been moved to another firm, and now all of a sudden there's no beneficiary on the life insurance, there isn't a beneficiary on your retirement account. your asset, the piece of real estate you purchased, is just owned by your name, in your own name, and now your framework, it's there, but the assets aren't working and integrating to the optimum performance that could be. And so that's going to create a little bit more headaches when that person passes, because there's going to be more work to do.
Yeah.
More complications, probably court action.
And probate, from what I can tell, I haven't gone through it yet personally, but doesn't sound very fun for family members and doesn't sound like a very fun process. Am I correct on that? Or is it just a process and you just have to go through it and it just takes time and a lot of paperwork?
It's a little bit more complicated. I wouldn't say that the client has that much more difficulty than they do with a trust, but it's going to be a longer process.
Okay.
It's going to be a more expensive process.
Okay.
It can be very complicated in some circumstances, but for the most part, it's just a longer, more expensive route.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. What else would we like to tap onto as we...
If we, how would someone get in contact? Is this something that, you want to start earlier in life than later? A little bit, but
Okay.
What are the steps of setting up a meeting, and what does that look like?
Okay. So, Chris, say you've got a young family out here watching, and maybe they're planning on having kids, or they just had their first kid. When should, let's say, a family, for example, with children, young children, think about setting up a family trust? I mean, what would your advice be to a younger crowd out here watching this, planning for their future?
Yeah, I think that as soon as you have children, I think it's a good idea to try to get planning, because you have a different concern set.
Okay.
You have, if both parents are gone, how are we going to raise these children? How are we going to get them to
college,
be,
educated,
through college, self-sufficient, the maturation process that the parents aren't there to do. So you need to pick, in essence, the guardians, or who are like the parents where the children are going to live with until they're an adult, age 18. And then you also have the assets. Who's going to manage the assets to help with raising the children, getting them through college, and then getting them started in their life? So I think that warrants attention early. Not everyone does it, but I think it warrants attention early if you can do it. Oftentimes I see that a lot of my younger clients have either large life insurance policies, or I start to maybe encourage them to have larger life insurance policies, because that's a way for a relatively inexpensive cost to create some liquidity in the event that they're deceased, to raise their children and carry them to adulthood.
So everybody out there watching, pick up your phone, call Chris at his office, Albence Associates, and they can schedule an initial consultation to come in and meet with you and sort of get an overview of what you do. You kind of assess what they've got going, give them suggestions of what they should put in place, the next steps, and create a plan with them.
Yes. I mean, typically what I will do is we'll have a one-page questionnaire and an asset inventory that we'll ask the potential client to complete. And that gives us a good jump start to have a meeting and say, okay, these are the things that I think I would be concerned with your situation, and these are the ways that I think we would address it.
That's great. What an awesome service to have in beautiful La Jolla, California, and certainly a good spot to have clientele. There's good clientele for you and for estates and planning. So thank you for coming in, Chris. It was a pleasure to have you. Anybody that needs planning, which is everybody, reach out to Chris Albence and he'll get you set up.